You're listening to This Week in Big Sky Football, a comprehensive look at all this week's action in Big Sky Football. Now here's your host, Scott Gerard.
Hey, welcome on in. It's another edition of This Week in Big Sky Football. Big Sky play continues as we make our way down the home stretch. I'm Scott Gerard alongside producer Lloyd Cole. We have another great show lined up for you today. Eastern Washington head coach Aaron Best will join us here in just a moment. We'll also catch up with Idaho State head coach Rob Fennessy, Montana quarterback Dalton Sneed, and in our final segment, as always, we'll wrap things up with Craig Haley from Stats. Let's go through the games this previous weekend. Eastern Washington picked up a big road win against Northern Colorado, 48-13. Weber State controlled the game against Sacramento State. They get a win on Senior Day, 26-14. Josh Davis with 129 yards and a score. Montana's Dalton Sneed threw 5 touchdown passes in the Grizz win at Southern Utah, guided Montana to a 57-14 victory to snap the Grizz losing streak. It was a high-scoring day for Montana State and Cal Poly, but it was the Bobcats that came away with a 49-42 victory. Keelan Doss had 103 yards on 8 receptions with 2 scores in UC Davis's 42-20 victory over Northern Arizona. Top 25 polls this week saw Weber State, UC Davis, Eastern Washington go 3, 4, and 5 in the Stats FCS poll, while the Eagles are 4th, Wildcats 5th, and Aggies 7th in the AFCA coaches poll. Now to the new polls this season, new to the polls this season, the Bengals of Idaho State ranked 24th and 25th in the respective polls. So let's go out to the phones. Welcome in. He's the head coach of Eastern Washington, Aaron Best. Coach, how you doing?
Good. Thanks, Scott, for having me.
Hey, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Your team coming off that dominant victory against Northern Colorado. I know in this conference, it doesn't matter who you're playing, road wins are always tough to come by. How impressed were you with your team in that performance?
Well, like you say, Scott, wins are hard to come by, and they're hard enough. Then you on the road in this conference, which from top to bottom is the best it's ever been, in my opinion, over the last 20, 25 years in terms of having to bring your A game. But it's almost like you got to bring your A-plus game on the road. So we challenge our kids the same way every week, but just know it's a little bit harder sleeping in different beds, getting up at different times, especially when you're playing a noon game and an hour ahead on our internal clocks. And so our guys did a great job. Coaches put in great schemes. Guys played hard, played energized, and we played really, really well in all 3 phases. How's
your team rallied after the loss of Gage Gabrud?
Well, I think it's hard to lose anybody to a season-ending injury, and then when that somebody is your signal caller, your captain, at a position that is highly been sought after here and got great production over the years here. It's there's a few different darts to get thrown at that wall, and so but we don't blink, and that's the biggest deal. We've developed competitive depth over time, not just depth to develop a depth chart, but guys that are 2s and 3s that we think can fulfill and close the gap if the 1s and 2s are not able to go in situations. And Eric's done a fine job thus far. But it certainly is, especially from a leadership standpoint where, you got a guy that started 30-plus games, had the credentials that he's got. His voice is what we probably miss most. There's going to be some play that's not as good as Gage's, from an experience standpoint from Eric's. But in terms of the voice, that's probably what we miss the most as far as just direction. Those old linemen up front have heard that voice for 2.5 years. So it's just a different voice, but we expect the same results.
Well, seriously, honestly, at that position, at that school, that carries a lot of weight. How do you feel like, I know it's tough to recreate that voice and that leadership in the locker room, but how do you feel like Eric Berrier's handled himself in that kind of a situation?
Well, I think he knows what he's capable of right now from a leadership. It just doesn't happen because you're thrust into the quarterback role. He's going to rely on the other seniors on offense, the other seniors on this team that have played more ball than he has in terms of direction. Coming to the sidelines, he's naturally going to ask probably a few more questions of myself and or Coach Reeder, our offensive coordinator, and just, continuing to absorb all the information he gets, but don't absorb it all at once, little by little. We don't want to bury ourselves in information just to obtain it. So he's bit by bit we're getting better. There's things that we're going to have to live with, and we know that it's experience driven no matter what the position is. But at the same time, he's got some things that some of the guys that I've seen over the last 20 years here at that position haven't had, and so it's exciting on one end and maybe interesting on the other.
From, coaching changes to personnel changes, it seems like you developed a nice culture there at Eastern where it doesn't matter who's on the sidelines or who's out on the field, that there's a expectation of winning and winning at a high level, and more often than not that happens. How impressive is it that culture continues to thrive there at Eastern Washington?
Well, there's a few good orchestrators before myself and Mike Kramer, Paul Wolf, and Bo Baldwin. Before Mike Kramer was Dick Zorn. So we don't like expectations. I think that word kind of gets thrown out there. We call it standards. This is what you're going to meet, and if you meet them, awesome. If you exceed them, even better. And so the standard over the years has been, be a good teammate, look to overachieve, because everybody's got the ability to overachieve in my estimation. Once we find a wall, let's knock it down and get to the next one. Let's not try to go around the wall. And I think the guys that we recruit over especially the last 10 or 15 years, have developed, bought in, and proceeded to drive the culture that we today nurture. And so a lot of that credit goes to our predecessors here as head coaches and assistant coaches. But it is fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to see guys be very successful on and off the field that at one point in their career maybe they weren't as confident in. And so seeing those things are kind of why we do what we do.
I know that rankings are just numbers, and you still have a lot of work to do, but were you pleased to see your team's name in that top 10 of the FCS committee's list last week?
Well, it's always nice when you have, 3 and now 2 games left. Like we talked at the beginning of the year, polls are awesome, but they're more awesome, when there's 11 games completed. And so whatever we've earned, we will have earned, and we'll continue to fight and scratch and claw each and every week. But for this team to be in the position they're in, 7-2, hosting, senior day against UC Davis this Saturday, I think that's phenomenal. We always visualized it. We always believed in it, and now we're here about ready to do it. And so those are fun as a parent or as a coach to roll out a visual, and the visual actually takes place, and now we got to play this thing out. And so we got to take one game at a time like we always have. The next game is always the biggest game, conference, non-conference, home, away. That's the way we've always approached things, and certainly as much as we like the outcome of last game and how we performed in all 3 phases, we still got work to do against a heck of a UC Davis team this Saturday.
Massive game against UC Davis. They're undefeated in league play. What jumps out at you when you look at them on film, and what do you expect this weekend?
Well, they throw you unbalanced formations. They play at an up tempo, and they at a turbo tempo at times. They've got 2 of the best players in the conference, in my opinion, at quarterback and at receiver. We got a firsthand look at those guys and at Davis last year, and I thought some things I've seen over the years here have been incredible by some of the receivers and quarterbacks. But last year on display was an absolute it was a gem with Jake Mayer and Keelan Doss. I mean, I went up and looked him in the eyes after the game. It was a tough loss for them. We came back in the waning minutes of the game, and but I respect their play. They're a tandem that is not someone that we wanted to look forward to the next year, having just eked one out down at Davis last year. But I see innovation on offense. Coach Plow does a great job mixing things up, trying to take advantage of things you're not doing defensively. And so we've got to get our eyes right. And then defensively, they have enough players to make enough plays. They test you in the back end. They'll play some matchup zone coverage and also play man. They like to bring 4, 5, and sometimes 6-man pressure. They're not stagnant on defense. So it's a well-rounded team with a signal caller as good as Jake is. Anything's bound to happen, especially when you got guys on the outside that can make plays for you.
Well, Coach, good luck this weekend. Always good to catch up with you. Look forward to catching up with you again here very soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
You got it. Eastern Washington head coach Aaron Best as the Eagles will host UC Davis coming up Saturday at 1 o'clock Pacific time. Obviously, massive game between those 2 teams. Take a break, come back with segment number 2. We got Idaho State head coach Rob Fennessy joining us next here on This Week in Big Sky Football.
CenturyLink Arena plays host to the 2019 Big Sky Men's and Women's Basketball Championships in Boise. Postseason college basketball is back in Boise, and we have your front row seat to the event. The women's tournament will be held March 11th through the 15th, while the men's championship will take place March 13th through the 16th. The wait is over. 22 teams, 20 games, 2 champions. Don't miss your chance to buy tickets for this fun-filled week of basketball. Tickets are on sale now at BigSkyInBoise.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football.
Welcome on back. You're listening to segment number 2 here on This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Scott Gerard. Hey, Pluto TV is your leading free internet television service in America, and as part of that deal, the Big Sky Conference will air all of its live streaming sporting events on Pluto TV for free, including up to 700 football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, and selected soccer, softball, and track and field events. All you have to do, it's real simple. Go to Watch Big Sky on Pluto TV to find the games from several different sports. All right, let's go out to the phone lines. Welcome in Idaho State head coach Rob Fennessy. Coach, how are you?
Good. How you doing today, Scott?
Good. Always fun to catch up with you. Appreciate you making some time. But let's talk about that crazy game with Portland State. You come away with a 48-45 victory. Just how was the blood pressure after a game like that?
Oh, it was probably up. I was relieved after, but it was, we wanted to honor the old late 80s, early 90s Big Sky Conference and get into a shootout.
There you go.
So, that's what it felt like. It felt like Nevada versus Idaho back in the mid-90s.
Obviously those games they're fun for the viewers to watch, but as a coach and you're watching teams go up and down the field, what is it like to try to make adjustments on the fly and try to find any way to come away with the W? What's that like on the sidelines in a game that turns into a shootout like that?
Well, it's just one of those that you're constantly, working on the next series. What you just assume that the other team's going to score, and you're just, like I said, you're just constantly trying to figure out, okay, we do this, we do that, move the ball down, but you're always hoping also you can hold them, defensively, say, get us one more stop or hold them to 3. You're looking for someone to flinch on one side or the other. And, but on your end, you're always trying to get points. That's one thing. And it worked for us against North Dakota in the first half of our game with them this year, is just come away. When you get one of those games, you want to come away with points in some form or fashion.
Your team's averaging just over 40 points a game this year. What has it been like to get that team ramped up so much offensively to the point where you're scoring so many points? What's that process been like?
Geez, just the kids buying into, what we're doing, first of all. And second of all, Mike Ferreter's done a good job taking this to the next level with our offense. And so the kids are into it. They never feel that they're down. They never feel that they're out. And they feel they can move the ball and score on anybody. And we know it's tough to do every game, but and then guys are just playing with a high level of confidence. Our running backs, Mikey. The good thing about our running backs is they think they're going to score every time they touch the ball. If they get tackled for a 2-yard gain, they're mad. And then you got Mikey and Mitch out there running around, and just kind of a fun situation.
Your Bengals cracked the top 25 this week. How good does it feel to get a little bit of recognition for your team with what they've been able to accomplish this year?
Yeah, it's great, to have that. I said in my press conference yesterday, it's great for the kids. Love for them to get the recognition, but I'd gladly give that ranking up to guarantee a win at Cal Poly this week. So, it's great. We're looking at it, but these guys are focused, as I've kind of tried to say all season, on a bigger vision, and they know that ranking doesn't mean anything if we don't go out to San Luis Obispo and play well.
Rob Fennessy is joining us here on This Week in Big Sky Football. I think I've told you this before. I kind of grew up in that southern Idaho era. I know what it's like when Big Sky Football really clicks in. I grew up watching Idaho come down there and Boise State back in the day. When that community gets dialed in, it's really fun to watch. What's it been like with this team and the resurgence of Bengal football in that Pocatello community, and what have those home games been like this year?
Yeah, the home games have been awesome with everybody coming out. I don't get out. As coaches, we're hermits. We're in our office. I get to go out to dinner with my wife on Thursday, and that's about it. And I think it's I get people coming up and saying, "Hey, great season on it," but I don't get too much of it. But I know that I hear from a lot of other people that there's a lot of a nice buzz in the community, and obviously with people coming out to the games, I think it's great that they're supporting us, and we as a team really appreciate it, and we hear them. It's great.
Your offense, as we mentioned, continues to play well, but it's been interesting to watch the diversity of that offense, and you've got multiple different weapons and guys who step up week in and week out, and at different times. What's that been like to see different guys at different times really step up and help out your crew?
That just shows, everybody's willing to play a role on this team. There's no selfishness. They, if Ty's having a good game at running back, Ty Flanagan, and we decide to ride him, that's, good. James is supporting him all the way. It's the vice versa with James. The wide receivers, they know that on this play, I'm supposed to run this particular route to open up this other guy, and we do have routes in the offense where it's like, hey guys, I can guarantee you're not getting the ball on this, but you need to do this to open up this, the other thing, and there's just no selfish play. Everyone's into it, and there's a lot of faith, like I said, in our coaches. With Roman with the O-line and David with the running backs, Aaron Pryor the tight ends, and Mike Farrader organizing it and calling the whole thing.
We talked a lot about offense. How's your defense developed throughout the course of the year?
Done a good job. I mean, I have always said from the get-go, I'd hate to be a defensive coordinator in this conference. You got so many diverse offenses. Just like this week with what we're doing, what we're going against with the option, and then you get Montana State with all their quarterback run stuff, and Cal Davis, who is similar to us. And then next week we'll have Weber, who's going to come out and tight ends and fullbacks and try to ram it down your throat. So. Coop, they do a good job of adjusting. I mean, it's not easy, and we started off strong early statistically, and made some key stops here lately. Specifically in the Montana State and here last week in the Portland State game, and that's what we kind of needed to do against Davis in that game. Didn't get it done, so they've done a good job adjusting. Great job.
What are your keys against Cal Poly? What do you got to do to get a W this weekend?
Well, we got to run the ball and stop the run. We got to win the turnover battle, and we got to play penalty free. Those are key things. Obviously, with Cal Poly, the number one thing you got to do is stop the run. But we feel those are the four tenets that we feel will help us win the game. We also got to take advantage of when we get the ball of scoring, because we're not going to have that many opportunities. You generally get 14. Somewhere 14, 15 drives a game. With Cal Poly, we're maybe going to have nine or 10 at the most, and we have to take advantage of that.
Coach, always a pleasure to catch up. Good luck this weekend. Congrats on the season so far, and keep it rolling. Look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You got it. Idaho State, Rob Fennessy here on This Week in Big Sky Football. Big game. Bengals will play Cal Poly this Saturday at 4 o'clock Pacific. Take a break and continue on next. You're listening to another edition of This Week in Big Sky Football.
Pluto TV is your one-stop shop for Big Sky action.
That's his first and the team's first.
The leading free internet television service in America will stream live sporting events, including up to 700 football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, and selected soccer, softball, and track and field events. Simply go to Pluto TV to find games from several different sports. Pluto TV is your one-stop shop for all Big Sky action.
Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football.
Welcome on back. You're listening to segment number 3 here on This Week in Big Sky Football. I'm Scott Gerard. Time to announce your Root Sports Players of the Week. Montana State Isaiah Ifanse was named Root Sports Offensive Player of the Week. had a freshman record of 227 yards rushing in the Bobcats' win over Cal Poly 49-42. Idaho State's Christian Hollins earning the Root Sports Defensive Player of the Week, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 1 fumble recovery in the win. And Idaho's Jalen Hoover named your Root Sports Special Teams Player of the Week with 8:16 remaining in the game, and Idaho down by 10. He blocked a punt that led to a 3-yard touchdown for the Vandals. Remember, Root Sports is your official television partner of the Big Sky Conference. Let's go out to the phones. Welcome in Montana's Dalton Sneed. Dalton, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Grizz, big win over Southern Utah on Saturday. What did you see from the field that allowed you guys to put up 57 points on the road?
I think it was just us finally playing a 4-quarter game. There's been games throughout the season where we've come out and had a strong first half and a poor second half. And I think this is the first game we really put it all together in all 3 facets of the game, so it turned out well for us to go out there and get a win.
No doubt. You joined the Grizz back in spring. What was it about Montana that made you feel like this was going to be your next stop in your playing career?
I would say that the coaching staff and just the overall city of Missoula. And when I say city of Missoula, I mean that the fans, Washington Grizzly Stadium, I truly think there's no other fan base like it in the country. It's absolutely phenomenal up here. And then, obviously, Coach Schauk being one of the most winningest coaches here in the Big Sky Conference. It's hard to turn that down with a coach like him.
Yeah, no doubt. He's a fun one. What's it like playing for a coach like that?
Oh, he's intense. He loves to get after it. He's one of the greatest coaches I've ever played for. He has your back at all times, but demands the best out of you 24/7. So no other coach I'd rather be playing for.
What's that offensive scheme like for you, and what's that adjustment been like, trying to acclimate yourself to that offense?
I'd say it's not too much of acclimating for me. It's kind of what I did in high school, and that's why I really like Coach Rose in the system. Kind of another reason why I came up here. So Coach Rose has done a phenomenal job. It just kind of fit me in the scheme and doing things that fit to my play style and work for the offense.
You mentioned Washington Grizzly Stadium. What's it like playing in that stadium on a Saturday afternoon during the football season?
Oh, the stadium is jumping. The 25,000-something fans that come out and support are crazy, die-hard Grizz fans, and they're the best in the nation. They've helped us a lot in games with the other offense struggling to get going at times because they can't hear themselves. So just a phenomenal fan base to be playing with.
You got 2 games left in the regular season. You played Idaho this weekend. What's the key for Montana to end up getting a win against the Vandals?
Just executing, again, in all 3 facets. We got to play smart, sound football, penalty-free, and no turnovers. That's inevitably why we had such a good game on offense last week. There's no turnovers, and it showed on how we put up so many points. So, again, just executing in all 3 phases, and that should inevitably lead to a win for us.
Well, Dalton, we appreciate you joining us. Good luck the rest of the way. We look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You got it. Montana should be a fun one playing at Idaho this Saturday, 3:30 Pacific kickoff for that game. Coming up, final segment of the show, we'll chat with Stats Craig Haley. We'll also note where you can find the Big Sky games on Pluto TV this weekend. You're listening to This Week in Big Sky Football.
The 2019 Big Sky Men's and Women's Basketball Championships are headed to Boise. Buy your tickets now for a fun-filled week with basketball for all to enjoy. Purchase your tickets today by visiting BigSkyInBoise.com. That's BigSkyInBoise.com.
Welcome back to This Week in Big Sky Football.
The action rolls on with the 11 sports game of the week. Southern Utah is going to host Weber State at 5 o'clock Mountain Time. Root Sports will air 2 games this week with Northern Colorado and Montana State and Montana at Idaho. That game will kick off at 3:30 Pacific Time. That Northern Colorado-Montana State game will begin at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. Rest of the games this weekend can be found on Pluto TV by downloading your app on your smartphone, tablet, or TV. Eastern Washington will host UC Davis. That game at 1 o'clock Pacific. Portland State will play at North Dakota. That game at 2 o'clock Central. Cal Poly hosts Idaho State at 4 o'clock Pacific. And Northern Arizona, they will face Sacramento State. That game with a 6 o'clock Pacific time. A lot of craziness going on in the Big Sky Conference as we work our way towards the end of the regular season. Let's go out to the phones once again and welcome in FCS Senior Editor of Stats, Craig Haley. Craig, how are you?
Doing well. Certainly exciting times this week, Scott.
Oh, boy. This is when it gets really interesting. Let's talk about this weekend's past games. UC Davis is now 1 game away from clinching at least a share of the title for the first time in school history. They were picked to finish 9th in the preseason polls. What's been the biggest difference for the Aggies this year compared to maybe last year?
Sure. I mean, they're just better all around. I mean, on offense, they have all these weapons and versatility even. I mean, just look at the running backs that come out of the backfield as pass catchers. I mean, Jake Mayer obviously is even better this year than last year, and he had a great year. The defense is so aggressive with Mason Moe leading the way. They're leading the conference in sacks. The coaching staff has them in a great spot. They're playing relaxed and always believing, even when they're behind. They're basically better across the board, and they were competitive last year.
Yeah. So when you look at Eastern Washington against UC Davis this weekend, who do you think comes out of that in a massive game between those two?
I was afraid you would ask that. It's definitely one of those games where you feel uncomfortable no matter who you pick. I mean, UC Davis has been the better team this season, but at some point they're going to have a bad game at some point. They haven't, and maybe they throw in a clunker up in Cheney, but I just think these two teams go back and forth, and Eastern has a chance to really be physical in the trenches. But on paper, I do think you have to favor UC Davis. They experience at quarterback, and even though I've been waiting for that one bad week, I mean, I think you go UC Davis in this one.
Let's look at North Dakota. They've been getting some top 25 recognition this season. Yet the Big Sky teams in the Big Sky have knocked them off 3 times, including Idaho getting the W this past Saturday. Are they still in the conversation for an at-large playoff bid?
Well, they hope so, but they have to win their final 2 games just to get to 7-4, and that still may not be enough. I mean, there's going to be 8 to 10 teams in the mix for the final couple at-large spots. Sam Houston and Montana are nice wins on North Dakota's resume, but they'll be in the conversation at 7-4, but they're probably going to need some at-large candidates to lose in the next couple weeks while they're winning.
What about Idaho State? They break into the top 25. What's their outlook looking like for the next 2 weeks?
Just been a terrific season there. I mean, you have to think they win at Cal Poly this week, and if so, then they're going to have to beat Weber State to get to 8-3 for the playoffs. I mean, 8-3 and 7-4 is so different for the Bengals because one of their wins, obviously, is Subdivision 1, the Western State win, which doesn't really help their playoff resume. They don't have any bad losses at this point, and if the playoffs began today, they'd be in. But I do think they need to get to 8-3 and not be 7-4 with 6 Division I wins.
So there's a big gap between when the committee's looking at teams between 8-3 and 7-4.
Yes, and again, I mean, with Idaho State, it involves a Subdivision I win, the Division II opponent, and they really don't count that the way they do against the Division I team. So I do think a 7-4 team can get in with 7 Division I wins. I think this year it may be tough for a team with only 6 Division I wins. It's not out of the question. It's happened twice for at-large teams at the Missouri Valley. But you're leaving yourself at risk if you're in that scenario.
Are there teams that may deserve to be in the top 25 that aren't right now?
Well, I mean, between 20 and 30 in the rankings, it's so tight. So everybody sort of has that feeling that they should be in. I definitely say Samford down in the Southern Conference because they've been so hot in the last month, and they're more talented than their actual record, 5-4. And then we're talking about, like a Montana State or a Western Illinois. I mean, obviously the Bobcats won the head-to-head meeting back in September, but, Western Illinois has been the better team since then. So I think you're right. There's a handful of teams maybe right outside the top 25 that have that case.
What do you think about the FCS committee's top 10 list they put out last week, and did you think there were any major snubs?
At the time, I think it was a pretty solid list. There are only 8 seeds that in the playoffs, although their committee, they do a top 10 ranking. The one snub I had Colgate as a seed prior to the ranking, and the committee didn't even have the Raiders in their top 10. I didn't agree with that, obviously, but the committee does rankings every week. I think it's unfortunate that is the only public reveal they're doing this season. Yeah. Last year it was 2 reveals. The year before 3 reveals. Now we're just all guessing again. You can use it as a base, but it would have been nice if they did another one this week.
Craig, always a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks for your time. We'll do it again next week.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
You got it, Craig Haley from Stats. That'll wrap up the show. Big thanks to Eastern Washington's Aaron Best, Idaho State's Rob Fennessy, Montana's Dalton Sneed, and, of course, Craig Haley from Stats. Big thanks to Lloyd Cole for putting the show together, and executive producer Denise Thompson. I'm Scott Gerard. Enjoy the games this week. Be back with you next week for another edition of This Week in Big Sky Football.